Welcome to Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose podcast. Our podcast showcases inspiring appraisers and professionals from the industry who are leaders in their field. How did they get to where they are? What have they learned along the way? What can we learn from them? Your host is real estate investor, entrepreneur, and appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another exciting, engaging, and informative session episode, time together with Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose podcast. Another fascinating peer that we get an opportunity to talk with today. You're going to love it. And in order to show your love, would you do what only you can do? And that is spread the love. When you subscribe to the podcast, your small action helps tell the networks that this matters, that actually getting to connect with, through the power of podcasts, perspective, understanding, and experience of peers to really not only inform us, but actually help us all take it to the next level. So thank you for not only subscribing, but then liking, and even, you know what, you're going to love Matt. So definitely comment, because we've continued to grow, more than doubling in size and impact, all because of you sharing how much value you get out of getting an opportunity to be moving around. Maybe you're just getting some yard work done and catching up on some podcasts, or you got some drive time. Whatever it may be, thanks for your generosity and thanks for your support through listenership. And with that, I want to thank our guest today here on Perusings. Matt, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Matt, we're just curious, buddy, were you born this way? Or how did you get into the valuation and appraisal profession?
Oh, it's a great fun story. Most
of them are, Matt. Most of them are.
I was working at Subway, and who's now my wife, she got pregnant before we were married, she got pregnant. I was working at Subway. I was a Subway Jedi. I was the best sandwich artist this side of the Mississippi. And
nice.
Yeah, I was so good. I obviously had to find something, start taking life a little bit more seriously. I was about 20 at that point. And,
you mean you didn't own the Subway at that point and build up your whole kingdom of Subway franchises and become a Jedi master over all the Subway little stormtroopers? It
crossed my mind, but you work in food long enough, and for me, I just couldn't work in food. Fast food, any type of food service. That's a very frustrating. It's just not where my desire is.
Totally get it.
Yeah. And so I had actually found, my dad was an auto body repairman. He painted and so I tried to go down that road, and I was a painter's helper for about a year. And it just wasn't panning out for me. It was really. I didn't love it. I mean, of course, when you're supporting a family, it doesn't matter if you love somebody, you just keep, it doesn't matter if you love the job, you just keep at it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But then what happened was I had, my brother had a buddy from college who had an appraisal business, and, and he said, hey, you want to come on board? And that was probably late 2002, early 03, maybe.
Okay. So at this point, we'd come through Y2K. Prince was no longer singing about 1999. And here you are kicking off a brand new century, brand new decade, and moving out of the auto body space.
Appraising always clicked to me, I guess. I enjoyed it immensely from the first time I got in, whether it was the inspection side of things, or the logic puzzle that roping values, prices together with all the different factors. I always found that really intriguing and a good brain challenge. So it was a much better outlook than what I had when I was working in the auto body space. And early 2000s. You had companies like, it was Rock Financial back then. They were really starting to take off. I think you saw a movement, the beginning of a movement where getting loans real estate loans became easier. The process became a little more streamlined, and so the appraisals were just rolling in the door. Obviously you had the comp checks rolling in back then, right? Just faxing over comp checks. Hey man, if you can hit 150, we'll order the appraisal. And it's just, you look back on those times and you're just like, gosh, what were we thinking? How was that a decent business model? Or you take packets in and you go into each company's store to try and get business. Like, hey, we will turn these around fast. And I want to say we never would commit to a crazy value. I was lucky enough to be mentored by a guy named Dale Rickert, who I'm still good friends with to this day. His biggest thing was he held the line. If the value was there, it was there. And to me that there truly is nothing more important in this business than public trust and maintaining it. So that was my intro back in the early 2000s to this industry.
Wow. That's amazing. And I'm so glad to hear that your entry experience was a person who held the line. I think that's such an important starting point. I think about so many experiences people have shared, and their early experiences in most cases are the foundational formation of how they're going to perform through the rest of their life and their career. And that's great to hear. So what was it like for you coming out of having been a subway Jedi and then, in the auto body space, trying to do car painting, and now you're out learning this whole appraisal process back in the early 2000s? I mean, technology wasn't what it was today. You're young, you're eager, you're a fast learner. What were you up to back in the early 2003 timeframe when you're getting exposed to this stuff?
Well, I think as you'll see, I have a lot of various projects that I've taken on over the years. I tend to bite off more than I can chew, and then I pray real hard that God gets me out of the trouble I get myself into. So one of the first projects we had jumped into was we got a contract to perform inspections for an insurance company that insured municipalities across the state of Michigan. They insured about 80% of the municipalities across the state of Michigan. So me and my brother, who was in the industry at the time, we traveled all over the state. We were inspecting fire stations, police stations, down to town halls that were built in 1850 and little cemetery buildings. But we were also looking at wastewater treatment plants and the water treatment plants.
Yeah.
And basically, we weren't valuing anything at that point. We were doing the full inspections and submitting it to the insurance company, and they were plugging in their replacement cost numbers for those structures. But it was fascinating. It was, a couple of years on the road, pretty hardcore, especially when we did the Upper Peninsula. But there's just how wastewater is treated is fascinating. There's so many pieces to it, where we get our clean water from.
That's such a great point. You make it about so many things we take for granted because they're not a problem, and then we don't look into them until they are a problem, and then we're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, well, it's been that way, some version of it, for a long period of time. And yet I hear you talk about getting this unusual opportunity to see a wide variety of properties, aka the municipal buildings like fire stations and what have you. So was there any training for that, or did they basically say, hey, here's a Polaroid camera and a tape measure, go nuts?
Well, I think at that point I'd been a trainee, and I probably just got my initial state certified license. So I had been measuring houses, but no, it was, we bit off more than we could chew, and we figured it out. If I had to go back to a building because it had weird angles, just to make sure it was measured properly. If I'm not afraid to ask a stupid question either, just because I'm not afraid if it makes me look dumb or not. Because if I don't know the answer, I want to know it. And so a lot of times with the construction materials of those buildings, especially if you take a fire station, some of those have some really extensive exhaust systems because they're running trucks inside a lot. So you have to have a really powerful exhaust system.
Oh, yeah.
And so learning that stuff for the wastewater treatment process, there's so many pieces that go into that, and you have to have knowledge of that. And so, we were upfront about everything, just, but we didn't have to value anything. So it was measuring construction materials, layouts and stuff like that. And that was no problem.
Fascinating. And this was all because the mentor that you were working with landed a contract to do something adjacent to property valuation, but wasn't straight up appraisal.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, I think the insurance industry had come out with something. I think it was GASB 34, where it required them to have better accountability of what they were insuring, and so we got sent out to look at it. And actually, a lot of times we found some cities or townships had added buildings that were not on their insurance policies. Just that didn't get conveyed somehow or another in the process. But yeah, that was a fun project.
That's amazing. So you and your brother went on the road together for a couple years. Phenomenal. And I heard you mention the geographic reference. It sounded like it definitely extended beyond your home state.
No, it was mostly, we went to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, but we did do a couple in Ohio because I'm out of Michigan, but it was primarily Michigan.
Yeah, that's amazing. And for those that don't know, like so many of the states, Michigan is not small, and there is a wide diversity of land and land use throughout the state.
It's a beautiful state. Beautiful state.
Really is. Most people, if you haven't been up to the UP, they have no clue how different it is from the southern portion of the state. So Matt, you get this opportunity. You've been traveling for a couple of years, and then at that point, did you just retire, or what came next?
Well, went back to appraising.
Okay.
At one point in 2005, when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, there was another hurricane, Hurricane Rita, maybe? It was Rita? Let me look at my map ball. Rita was in 2005. It hit Texas. And so I did a short month or 2 month stint down in Texas, training with somebody who was doing insurance adjusting. When a massive hurricane comes through and they get the power lines cleared and the emergency services through, the insurance adjusters have to come in so people can get money to start rebuilding. And so we had followed a guy down there for a couple of months. And so, that was kind of during all that traveling around Michigan type of thing. I went down for a month or two to train with him on that. And so as the recession started to come on in 2008, 2009, right? What hurricane hit? Hurricane Ike hit Texas again. And I went down to work on Hurricane Ike doing the insurance adjusting because volume had dried up. So it was like, we got to do something. And that worked out well for me. And that kind of began a trend of going and doing some emergency hurricane work. So I worked in New York on Sandy. I worked in Louisiana, North Carolina, Florida. So that's been just another one of those, like, bite off more than you can chew and hold on tight.
Yeah, that is something that a perspective we've heard nothing about from any of our peers to date. Paint a picture for us. What's it like showing up in that environment, doing this kind of work?
It's stressful. A lot of people fail out of it. You'd think builders would be good because you've got to look at building materials. I think appraisers should be good at it, because where people really get screwed up and overwhelmed is you'll get 50 claims dropped on you all at once. So you've got to call and schedule appointments. That's what appraisers do. You've got to route, your best map to go to which houses when, something appraisers do. You got to measure the houses in the rooms, something appraisers do. You've got to look at construction materials, something appraisers do, maybe not to the extent that you do it with the insurance adjusting. But another one that's crazy is your orientation inside of a house. Appraisers have had this ability just from years and years of it, that is they probably don't realize how well orientated they are in houses versus somebody who doesn't really do that. And so a lot of people fail. So from that perspective, it's a lot of adjusters can't handle it. You get down there, there's still trees and roads, and so you can't go off your map routes to places sometimes. You got to stay usually 3 hours away from the major impact zone because most places don't have power, and the ones that do, all the people who've been displaced from their houses are staying there. So you would just plan on driving 3 hours each way. You're obviously going to inspect all day that day, and then maybe take a day or two to write the reports. You're doing hotels now or Airbnbs, so you're just absolutely living on the road, and you're really just shooting from the hip because every storm is different. Every storm presents different challenges. When Hurricane Florence hit the Carolinas, that was back I think in 2018. Everything was flooded. That was more of a flooding hurricane, and so the routes to get to any house, I had to backtrack an hour sometimes. But people are super happy, when they get you out there because they know they can start rebuilding their lives.
That's amazing. So you get this opportunity to go do emergency service work after a hurricane in support of helping property owners try to begin to put their lives back together. And what I'm piecing together from what you said, because unfortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, unfortunately, I have no idea what you're talking about. Unfortunately, I've never dealt with that. I've dealt with losses. I've dealt with a lot of insurance stuff. But essentially, this is to help support the insurance industry and actually getting monies to the insured to get started. Is that essentially what you're helping fulfill on?
You take pictures of damage. You estimate. There's software for that. The cost to replace it, and again, the insurance company then can write the check to the homeowner so they can start getting repairs done.
Wow, that's amazing. And you mentioned like getting 50 files dumped on you at a time. That's not an experience I've ever had. I've never been such an amazing professional to see that many come through at one time. But clearly you have an ability to manage an uncertainty and chaos to handle such a volume in one starting point. And I'm sure that was for a long period of time. That wasn't just one time it happened.
It's you just one step at a time. You got to eat the whale one bite at a time. That old where the sidewalk ends. The Melinda May, she ate the whale one bite at a time. Maybe no one remembers that story or that book. I don't know.
That's a good one, man. I appreciate that. So the again, that I hear how that builds on the experience you had already doing inspections for insurance for municipal properties for replacement cost. Was essentially that the same type of work you were doing on the hurricane emergency call out, or was it different?
No, it was different because there were overlapping similarities that help make you do it better. Just identifying construction materials. When you do the insurance adjusting, you have to understand how the repairs are going to be rebuilt. If you've got a damaged roof, you have to understand how the roof is constructed. And so, you've got roofing felt, you've got the type of shingles, you've got ice and water barrier, a drip edge that goes around the roof. You've got all these components to a roof. If a tree limb goes through the roof, now you start talking about the roof decking, and then what's in the attic? Is there insulation that was damaged? So you have to understand how repairs are going to be made in these instances. Whereas with the municipal work, that wasn't necessarily the case. We were just identifying construction materials, but you could see how one would bleed over to the other to help you do better at that. So, yeah, just running hurricanes is crazy. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to do them anymore. I'm getting too old for that.
Getting too old for that. Well, that's there's a reason why there's a certain cutoff to become a Navy SEAL. I'm not saying that Navy SEALs can go out and do these hurricane inspections, and then I'm not saying that you are or were not a Navy SEAL. I'm not trying to infer that. from what you said. But sometimes their age does have an influence. I can appreciate it. So how many years were you around that kind of space before you had your next career transition?
Well, that was in and out. So you got to understand when a hurricane
Oh, okay.
hits, they've got a maybe a month or two's worth of work. It has to be done. There's insurance rules that require these insurance gets people their money within a timely fashion. So I would go down. So take Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma hit Florida in 2017. I went down for about a month and a half, 2 months, and where I was working at that time was Amrock, and I had cleared it that I could take a leave of absence for two
Okay.
months and just go run these. And so, I just pop down and then I pop up. I'm an appraiser for the rest of the time. And it's, every couple of years a big hurricane comes. I don't go out on every hurricane that's ever been hit. So I mean, it's a big lift. I mean, you're really from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, 7 days a week, you're working. So it's not easy to do. So it's not something I'm doing all the time by any means. It's most of my career up through 2016 was in the trenches doing appraisals, forensic reviews. Gosh, we did forensic reviews in that after that recession. I know a lot of people did. The GSEs were putting forensic reviews out, and what a great learning
Hmm.
opportunity! I feel like to read how so many people approach and write appraisals, and then you learn how to read them, so it helps you understand what you got to put into your appraisals. That was a really nice. I mean, it obviously helped a lot of us feed our families during that recession. But from a understanding of an appraisal standpoint, that was such a big difference in my knowledge.
A lot of people don't have experience with forensic reviews. How did you get exposed to that, and how did you get trained up in it?
So, I mean, I'd done a few reviews with my going through my mentorship and over the years. I was with Dale Rickard at Community Appraisal from probably '03 till probably about '09. I started my own company, Eagle Appraisal, around then because
Hmm.
it was like if I've got to do an appraisal, I don't want to have to split the fee with anybody. I'm not, we're not getting appraisals. I can't afford to split my fee with a company. And so I launched into that. That carried me through the recession for a couple of years. And then I took a job with a company called an IRR residential company. Had another great mentor
Sure.
there, who's Anthony Reese, who's my good friend to this day. Another brilliant appraisal mind, and we started doing a lot of those forensic field reviews. Uh,
Oh,
and
okay.
again, I took to it naturally because it's that investigative. I've always been big on. I do support adjustments and understanding the values, and so it wasn't. It was never attacking appraisers, but more using facts. Most of the ones that were overblown, and you didn't have to really attack the appraiser. The appraisal attacked itself. But those were very enjoyable and good learning.
I'm thrilled to hear that. I personally agree with you. Unexpectedly, we've had a couple different stints in the decades I've been around the industry, and forensic review. Although I have to admit, at first I thought they sucked. They were like that was like the worst assignment you could get. I was like, I have to read somebody else's report, and these are terrible reports. I mean, some of them are actually really good, but at first it always seemed like they only sent you the ones that really sucked. And I'm like, this is harder to do. I'd rather just do the original appraisal for the same amount of money you're paying me than review somebody else's. I mean, that was my feeling of it. But I will share with you full alignment in that, wow, it was amazing training experience, learning experience, and also education that you can't get sitting in a class or reading a book. So I totally support what you were sharing there. Did you do just forensic work in your state, or did you expand, and were you covering a larger footprint, regional or national?
No, just in my area. Again at that point, or 2010s, 2011, we were really taking anything you could get. Uh, Drive-bys, just it didn't matter. Just send us the work. We're all trying to eat here. So It was a mix. It was a mix.
Yeah. No, that is totally the case. It's great to hear, because when you get that kind of mix, it exposes you to locations, externalities, property conditions, property types that very likely are not seen in the more local or domestic area that's covered, is what I learned. I don't know if you had the same experience.
Well, I think for me, one of the big things was, what extent does my explanation in a report go to a reader? So if I'm reading reports that you're writing, Michael, you're going to write a report different than me. So you might approach a topic and I might say, oh man, that is great how he put that together. Or, yeah, I don't think I really needed to know that. Like, you don't got to tell me you made adjustments at $1 per square foot per site. I can figure that out. Tell me how you support that adjustment. And so for me, it was, and then I take that and apply that to how I write appraisals. And I say, okay, this Michael Hobbs guy had a really nice point, the way he explained in his sales comparison approach. I'm gonna use that now because I feel like that makes a more credible report. And or the opposite, maybe it was just nothing in the report, and you're like, oh, that doesn't read well. I don't understand what he's doing here. And so knowing that if I had a similar shortfall in my appraisal, I would address it. Boilerplate stuff. When you start reading appraisals that are stock full of boilerplate, or they'll say the same thing multiple times. They'll say 6 times in the report they're not an expert, that they're not a building expert, and it's like, why are you saying it so many times? Yes. You start to weed out, and those were my reports, and I go and cut those out to make the report as efficient as possible.
80% of all businesses fail within 5 years, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. With so many roles and responsibilities that must be managed and have nothing to do with appraisal reports, is it any surprise that it's hard to keep up? Much less having a sense of peace, stability, and profitability that comes from growing your business? Given all of this, you might already be thinking about exiting your business one day. Don't miss the limited opportunity to work with Michael, a real estate expert and professional coach. He has worked with more than 300 owners and entrepreneurs to find their highest and best use by solving problems that reach their most important goals. Compress decades of learning into days by working with Michael. Michael is famous in real estate and business coaching. With his help, you can accelerate your growth, increase your quality of life, and earn more money, all while ultimately doing less. Michael helps you not just grow your business, but also find new purpose in it and in your life. If you're ready to take control instead of being controlled, contact him on LinkedIn or email him at michaelh@paru.com.
Man, amen to that, man. Totally get that. So you get this amazing experience. You've seen so many property types. You've covered a lot of geography. You get to then shift over to the forensic side of things. At this point, you've given it a go on your own, being an independent. And so what came next?
I took that job. I took a job with IRR Residential. It was time, right? When you start a business, you end up, you start an appraisal business because you're a good appraiser, but now you're only doing 50% of the time because you got to run the business the other 50% of the time. And so, I just felt like once we were pulling out of the recession and work was becoming plentiful, I wanted to go work with somebody, and again, I always will I like seeking out knowledgeable people in the industry. I love learning and I love, thinking about it at that higher level. And so I took that job. We were bought out by a company called EAMC around 2014 or so. And then I left there to take a job with Quicken Loans appraisal company. They weren't Quicken, they were probably Rocket at that point, but the appraisal company was TSI Appraisal, who later switched to Amrock. And so, that was a fun experience. There was a lot of projects that I got to be involved in, and a lot of people I got to meet along the way that really helped. At that time, that was about the time I ended up getting my SRA designation, and the process for that for me, I had a great class. There was an appraiser, the guy who taught our the big class at the end, right, where you go through the report and you write it all up. The demonstration of knowledge.
That was with the report writing class, the 2-part series. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yep. The teacher we had for that was a guy out of Minnesota called Rich Dubai, and he was awesome at really conveying some things. And there were some switches through that class I felt like that clicked in my brain that also really, took me to another level. Just the process and the thinking of appraisals it was a fantastic class. So that was right around the time I was over at Amrock, and then we were lucky enough to get in on a lot of the modernization beta testing, with Fannie and Freddie, where they were really starting to do the bifurcation and we got to beta test some of their in-house models. Freddie was involved with us too. I got to with Freddie. They put me in a room and I was on the phone with a homeowner, and they were walking around with their phone, and we were doing the inspections while they were just holding their phone. And so they were going room to room, data was being captured. And so, I mean, that was really the mid, between 2010 and 2020, that mid 2015 era, that bifurcated word started to kick off. And yep. I think the GSEs had enough data from the UAD data set, where they brought out at like 2011. I think they were able to start extracting some really good information and how do we take this industry into a more modern space. And so I got to be involved with a lot of those trainings there. I got to do training videos, commercials for them, because I live so close to the downtown Detroit area. They would just call me in and because I like to bite off more than I can chew and jump into the water. I'm always saying, yeah, all right, let's go do it. And so I did. I got to be in their training videos, and I started writing articles for them for an in-house magazine that they had, a quarterly magazine. They had me do a podcast for a couple of years. It was a fun experience, and just some great, unique things at Amrock, and then all the while just doing appraisals for them as well.
Well, first of all, I think, and we have so many firsts on this podcast, which is amazing, and you've checked the box on a number of them already, but here you were more than a decade ago, regularly writing articles that got published and pushed out. We've only had a few guests over nearly, I think we're coming up on 10 seasons that have done something like that, which is amazing. But you are only the second guest who's even been in and around the podcast world on your own accord, even if it's for somebody else. So, man, that's a great job, man. High five. Virtual high five on that.
That's right. It's all the fun that goes into it.
Yeah, that is totally the case. Holy smokes. And like you said, sometimes this is one of those interesting things, and I've heard it said so many times before. I don't know who gets the original ownership of it, but that idea that proximity is power. And I hear you talking about that. It's like, hey, I happen to work for this guy, and, Dale happened to get this contract. And as a result, here I am, and I'm inspecting all these municipal properties. Oh, and then, hey, I get this opportunity. I have a personal interest in seeking out knowledge and finding talented people. And as a result, you connect with Anthony and you get to be a part of, IR for a period of time and how that shows up. And then along the way, another opportunity shows up again, proximity that, wow, here's this emergency hurricane inspection and site work that's getting done. And then by the same token, because of where you lived and because of, in this case, an employer, it's like, hey, just come on into the office. And it means that doesn't happen for people that stay underneath a proverbial turtle shell. Like, you got to pop your head out is what I'm hearing you say. You got to actually connect with some people.
I mean, people are always looking to solve problems. How can you help people solve their problems? They say success is when preparation and opportunity meet. I love this industry. I mean, we've got our warts for sure, but I think a knowledgeable appraiser doing a good job is very important. I'm always been passionate about this industry because, again, I mean, really, aside from how it is important to the world, it's an industry that has helped me to provide for and raise a family. So there's an emotional attachment to this industry for me as well, probably like most of us. And so I do take it very seriously. One of the things that I'm big on is I don't, I don't like to come up to appraisal decisions. This is just necessarily what I think. I'd rather go and find it written somewhere. So whenever I have an issue, I'll cite maybe the selling guide or USPAP or any of the interagency guidelines. FHA 4000.1. I don't just say, well, you can't, an ADU is this because Matt Cowan says so. Well, here's what, if you're going to the GSEs, here's the guidelines that says an ADU is subordinate in size, or here's what an ADU's kitchen includes. And so I take this industry extremely serious. And again, that an opportunity arises, and I look for a solution to a challenge that someone might have, and it ends up being fun along the way, and you make some friends, and you have some good times, and you have some good experiences, and then next thing you know, you look back and you're 20 some years down the road with a lot of great experiences.
Man, that's really, really, really encouraging to hear. And, you tie that back together. Did you make the choice to seek additional education in the form of a designation? Or was that kind of pushed on you in employment? It's like, hey, if you want to get more opportunity, you need to do something or become something? Or did you observe that from other people? You're like, hey, what is that special sauce that they have? Or did one of your mentors just be like, dude, you should do this?
No, really, the Appraisal Institute was about to add a requirement to have a college degree to get a designation. I don't have a college degree. I went to college for a little bit, but I was disenfranchised with what I was being taught there. I love to learn. I think that probably shows through on our conversation, but I also love to pick what I want to learn, and just some stuff with college. So I had no intention of going back to college. So it never crossed my mind to get a designation, but when the Appraisal Institute was going to throw the requirement for a degree on there, I was like, I better get in there, because if I ever want it, I'll be grandfathered. So that was the reason I started pursuing that path.
That's what I love so much, is that you and Bill Gates are so similar in that sense. And you're like, dude, I don't need to finish college. I'm going to go conquer the world.
I appreciate the compliment. I don't know if Bill Gates is too similar for me.
I don't think so either, but nonetheless, it sounds fun.
I get the comparison, yeah.
In the spirit of fun, and college isn't for everybody, it's also interesting, and you touched on this earlier, and that changing circumstances, either those that we are a part of or those that are impacting us, that we may have no control over, definitely guide our actions. Now, I appreciate your honesty and your openness when you said, hey, at a very young age, I had family and family responsibilities, and therefore I had to do things that I probably wouldn't have done otherwise. And then here, you're like, oh my goodness, something's changing, but you were aware of the change, is what I heard you say. You were aware of the change, and therefore you took proactive action, as opposed to just reactive and being like, oh no, it's raining outside today. I'm like, dude, did you check the weather report before you got here today? So I totally appreciate that about you, Matt.
No, I do. I appreciate that. I think it's more of, in fact, when I worked at Amrock, they had me speak at a conference in Atlanta, because I fit one of their isms, which was being obsessed with finding a better way, is the term they used. And I tend to just like, how can I do this better? How can I do this better? That doesn't mean I jump onto every new modern technology right away. In fact, no, sometimes a lot of that stuff fails. And so, I'm just, how can I speed this process up? How can I be more efficient? And so, that's played a role in, I think, understanding that modernization it's gotta happen. I mean, if we didn't modernize, we'd still be pasting Polaroid pictures that we got developed at Walgreens to our appraisals and hand delivering them. So modernization is important, and I think it's been beat to death. I think all the appraisers now understand in the industry that we do need to modernize. But I also think it makes us look better. It makes us, I always say that the carpenter wasn't put out of use when the cordless drill was invented. It just helped him do his job better. And I think that's where we're at with our profession, is is, how can we do this better? How can we get more consistent values from one appraiser to the next? To me, this is one of the biggest problems, is how can we be more consistent? That's public trust right there. If you do an appraisal and come in at 150 and I'm coming in at 200, well, shoot, man, an AVM can do better than that. Why on earth would they want to pay all this money for us to go do it? We've got to be able to find a way to create more consistency from appraiser to appraiser in this industry.
What am I supposed to say? Amen to that. I mean, come on. Like, is there any counterpoint? I mean, Matt, I'm totally in line with you.
I know.
I'm grateful.
Everybody knows.
No, man, I appreciate it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was grateful when the ability for call waiting showed up back in the day. That shows my age. And you're like, oh my gosh, you didn't have to just keep getting the busy signal when you rang. Like, it would actually beep through and let someone know, like, hey, there's another call on the other line. You may still choose to avoid it, but you didn't know who it was back then. So you'd be like, hey, what's up? Okay, it's Matt. Matt, can't talk to you. I'm on the other line, and call you back. And when you had a bunch of siblings who were on the phone all the time, you're like, dude, I can't talk to my friends. So, I mean, there's something to be said about some technologies are better. And I'm glad we don't have rotary dial phones anymore.
Yeah.
But
you're really dating yourself here with rotary phones and call waiting here.
Hey, Matt, some of our listeners are on the senior side of things, meaning that they're over 30 is all I'm referring to.
Yes.
But more fun than that is your point. I love what Gary Vaynerchuk was saying in a recent talk he had somewhere over in Asia. I didn't pay attention to his audience, but he's been a big proponent of saying, I don't bet against technology. Technology 1, opposing technology 0. Like, technology always wins, whether you like the technology or not. And he went through like technology after technology after technology, like electricity and cars and the internet, like all these different things. And he's like, look, he said it was futile to resist because technology marches on whether you're in sync and in line with them or not. And I hear you saying the same thing, Matt. That's a big, big factor.
Yeah, I know Ernie Durbin has said something. I heard him once say he never carries a pen or a pencil ever anymore. And, which is funny because if you've ever met, if you know who I'm talking about, he's an older guy in this appraisal profession. And,
he's young at heart.
I'm not sure. Yeah, right. Yeah. He's someone who fits, in our appraisers demographic of 30 and over. But for someone like that to recognize, hey, we don't need writing utensils anymore in this industry, it's important.
Yep. No, that's a great point. And I mean, Pastor Durbin is a wonderful individual, and I remember Bill and I were having some good laughs about for someone of his generation that really displays a millennial approach to things. And I think that's really allowed him to have such a positive influence and an impactful perspective amongst a lot of people that might otherwise just be part of a pack and follow the herd, which makes a huge difference. And I think that's a great point for you because here you were at Amrock, you got exposed to things way ahead of most people, and yet your career didn't stop there, it continued to evolve.
Yeah, I just took the next step. At that point, I had an opportunity to, I was offered a job at another company that was outside of the appraisal role. It was a director in appraisal initiatives. I took that job. We recognized pretty quickly that, it wasn't going to necessarily work out between us. And so I was only in that role for about a month or two. But luckily enough, a job opportunity came up, a company called Lend US. I was hired there to, I forget what my title initially was, but my primary objective at first when I got in was the company had an AMC that they own, and I was in charge of bringing that into an in-house appraisal desk and seeing that through. And over the course of that time, I was promoted to chief appraiser, and then we did quite a bit of work. Wrote some policy and procedure for the company, and obviously, as you can imagine, just that changeover. We had actually changed over order management systems at the same time, and that was a tough set of circumstances. But you know what? We were successful in it, and it worked out great. It was just biting off more than you can chew and praying God gets you out of it. So that was successful, and then shortly after I came over to Cross Country Mortgage, which is where I'm at now, and having a great time with it.
What type of activities do you currently oversee in your role with Cross Country Mortgage as their chief appraiser?
Now, at Cross Country, I mean, each of these places, they can just be run so differently, and so your job assignments vary greatly every time I go to a new role, and it's no different with this. This one, my biggest is dealing with escalated appraisals. If there's investor buyback, so some post closing, we have a fee panel I oversee and audit. A lot of our work is with AMCs, so working with the escalation teams or chief appraisers over at other AMCs. So a lot of it is I'm back very heavily involved in a lot of individual appraisals. Again, the ones that make their way up the chain to me. A lot of research, which I like too. So I'd rather spend more time on one file than a little time. That's why I like the Fannie Mae forensic reviews back in the day. You could just really dig in and try and get behind and understand on an individual scale with a certain appraisal. So that's a lot of the biggest work I do now.
Oh, fascinating. And are there any similarities to the type of involvement or the files that you get involved in, or is it just literally across the board?
It just depends. Each region's different. There's been over the past couple of years, there was a big push about short-term rentals in the 1007. So there was a lot. It was nice that Fannie Mae went out and clarified that. It was actually about a year ago, around last June, I believe, that Lyle went on a podcast and talked about it and kind of put it out in black and white, which is always nice to have. Even though, you can go through a lot of these short-term rentals and there's just a lot of factors that aren't being included in those rents. If you can rent your house for $100 a day, you don't just multiply it by 30 days, and say, oh, well, you can, your monthly rent's, $3,000. But that was happening. And so again, so you have that, or each, like I said, each region's a little different. So this one maybe in California might come to me for X, Y, and Z, is this deficient? Is it not? And a house in Florida might have a different set of circumstances, or maybe proximity to water. I mean, that would be in California too, but maybe a house in Wyoming wouldn't be as big of a deal to be how close you are to the ocean. But just it gets escalated for one reason or another. It's a bad appraisal. That's usually the stuff I see. I usually spend my most of my days looking at poorly executed appraisal valuation assignments.
Yeah, got it. Well, that's an amazing experience. I mean, given everything that you've seen, everything you've heard, everything you've been exposed to, what are you looking forward to over the next 3 to 5 years?
That's a great question. And I have not.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, no, it is. I do look forward to seeing how the new intelligent forms are going to impact our profession. As I said just a few minutes ago, I think one of the biggest problems is the difference, in creating more consistent values. Technology usually advances, quantity, quality. It's a never-ending cycle of how technological advances occur. And so, we've worked on some modernizations things and some ways to try and improve the speed. We've got better websites and better engines that will help with the, supporting adjustments. But, now, hopefully we can find some ways to tighten up the value that in even comps that you get from appraiser to appraiser.
Yeah.
So I do look forward to that from the professional, in our profession, because I think that'll go a long way in substantiating our value to the industry, which again I think is significant. But look at it from a loan officer, regular loan officer or realtor. It's easy to pick on those guys, but let's say a loan officer who's got no idea what the appraisal. Loan officers are like elementary students for the most part. realtors maybe a little bit like middle school students, and then the appraiser's like a high school to a college student with our knowledge of appraisers. So imagine a branch, a loan officer gets one appraisal at 150 and one appraisal at 200. Well, naturally, in their eyes, they're both, they both are equally credible, and they're going to want the $200,000 one, where a lot of times you and I know that's usually the one that's probably worse. And so it makes both appraisers look bad because no one knows who to believe. It just, these guys are both far off. They both look like idiots, even though you, who came in at 150, probably has a great argument, and I'm just like blowing up value so I can hopefully get another appraisal. It makes us both look bad. And so I really hope that is the next step for our industry.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Matt, I really appreciate it. It's always a great contribution when peers like yourself come on, share a little bit about where you've been, what you've done, and what you're up to. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your sharing, and thank you for your openness, and thanks for your humor and your sentence sayings.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, it's hard to say no if someone wants to call you and say, "Hey, you want to talk about yourself for an hour?" So I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, that's true. That's true. So that's why we always ask interesting people. And with that, friends, thank you for joining us for an insightful hour with Matt, his perspective, chasing hurricanes, and also reconciling bad appraisals. So love to see you continue to subscribe. More importantly, thank you for your generosity and sharing. Thanks for continuing to rate us as one of the top podcasts in the space, and more importantly, thanks for adding some comments and showing Matt some love. Matt, have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome, buddy.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Appraisers, Appraisers on Purpose. We hope you enjoyed learning from the amazing professional paths and achievements of our beloved guests. Before we go, please subscribe on your listening channel, Spotify, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other podcast channels to hear more from appraisers and valuers regarding their life and their work. After you drop a comment below, who is one friend and peer you can generously share this episode with? If you have any suggestions or questions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a message on LinkedIn and we'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for listening, and until we're together again for the next session of Appraisers, Appraisers on Purpose, create the change that you seek.